So even though the Phillies are dominating in the playoffs, I still can't help but laugh at the fact that they gave Taijuan Walker $73 million just to be a cheerleader for the entire postseason. See, Frank, you notice how only good pitchers end up pitching in the postseason?
I was in agreement that he was overpaid big time. I mean, we all agreed on that part.
Just checking. What about Craig Kimbrell choking up back-to-back?
Hey, man, things still look fine. I mean, you're not paying the guy for what he did 10 years ago. I mean, you're paying him for now.
All I'm hearing is excuses. Mets Weekly Podcast, episode number 30, 60 minutes, brutal honesty, intro plate. So you guys know the drill by now. For those of you listening on our multiple available platforms, watching on Premiere or watching on Playback, make sure to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel and turn on those post notifications to never miss the premiere of the Mets Weekly Podcast every single week, along with instant live streams for breaking news this offseason. Follow us on Twitter, TikTok, and all of our individual links that are in the description. So we are currently just awaiting the next move for the Mets as of right now. There's not really much the Mets can do because the postseason is still going, but we're just kind of waiting for that next big move under David Stearns.
They're still waiting on the postseason to fully wrap up before they could do anything too significant. You know, we saw some of the guys that they got rid of as far as those non-tender candidates that we talked about last week. We saw some of those guys go. So it's all to a good start, but right now it's going to be mostly rumors because they're really not allowed to do anything crazy quite yet.
Opening up some 40-man roster spots as we expect them to be active in free agency, getting guys non-tendered. Surprisingly, we heard some teams rumored for coaching options. We've seen a guy, Will Venables, already turned them down, so you're starting to see that coming out. But again, we're just waiting for the Astros just to win their 57th World Series so we can get this over with, so we can get to work.
That's 7 consecutive appearances in the American League Championship Series for the Astros. Boy, wouldn't it be nice to get to that height one day? That would be nice to have that type of sustainable success. Well, going to take a while for that, but let's figure out how we can do it. And that starts with the top story of this week, which is, of course, the Mets manager search. They are still looking for a new manager, but we have gotten some updates on the story, and here they are. John Haben reported that the Mets are expected to hire an external option, implying that the rumored candidacy of bench coach Eric Chavez and now Mets associate Carlos Beltran as unlikely hires as the Mets' next manager. Sources closer to David Stearns insist that he is truly serious about considering a first-time manager for the position if free agent Brewers manager Craig Counsell is not interested in joining the Mets. Other sources with the Brewers believe that Counsell will most likely stay with Milwaukee, but is willing to listen to other offers if the price is right. Another name mentioned recently has been the emergence of Blue Jays first base coach Mark Brudzinski, who has been on the Mets' radar for the last week, yet to interview for the position. Joel Sherman of the New York Post also reported that the Mets were interested in interviewing Rangers associate manager Will Venable, but he declined to do so. Other media names mentioned include former Giants manager Gabe Kepler, Padres first base coach Ryan Flaherty, Astros bench coach Joe Espada, and 2023 WBC United States team manager Mark DeRosa, among others. The Mets will be hiring their 5th manager in the last 7 years after parting ways with Buck Showalter less than a month ago.
I think we kind of figured that the Mets were going to be looking external, and I think that they do have to consider the first-year manager thing at this point in time, just because there is that no-brainer candidate out there right now who has managing experience. They're really going to have a very thorough interview process to find the right guy that fits what they're looking for. And it's, like we talked about, is that, who's going to be making the decisions? Is it going to be David Stearns? Is it going to be the manager that they hire? Like, who's going to have the final say? And if you're forced to use a player like Daniel Vogelbach, like we talked about last week. So That's the thing that I'm looking at. One of the things that I find interesting is that the Giants request interview for Bob Melvin. And before Bob Melvin went to the Padres, he was someone I really, really wanted the Mets to get. I thought considering what he was working with in Oakland, I thought he did a really good job. There's a guy with managing experience I thought would be a nice fit for the Mets. And then you see him go to a team like the Padres, who also have the very big budget that they work with, have a bunch of star players, and then fail to perform to expectations. And it's like we've seen the Mets do that already. So this time around, I'm not as interested in Bob Melvin as I was before. So that's not one of the names that you mentioned of either. So I do find it interesting how quickly things could change, especially when it comes to a manager. A guy like Buck Showalter goes from being manager of the year to a guy that if you don't step down, you're going to get fired the very next year. I mean, it can be fickle like that with a lot of different managers. So that's why, to me, I think the Mets really should not rush this, because this is a very important decision. You can't keep having, like I've talked about, where you have a manager for 2 years and they're gone. Then you get another one. Then you get another one. It would be nice, like we talked about, if you want that Astros stability, you want teams that are in the playoffs every single year. I mean, you want to have the same guys in the front office, the same manager, because when you're constantly changing things, I mean, it just never works. So that's why I really want the Mets to, again, aim young. That definitely, if they're going to get a first-time manager, they got to aim young. Because, again, if you want to have someone who's got to be here for a long time, it's got to be someone who could work for a long time. We knew that no matter what, even if Buck Showalter did have another solid season, he wasn't going to be a long-term solution. So for me, those are the main things that I'm looking at. I'm just looking for someone who's young, and I don't want the Mets to rush this, because they really have got to have the right guy. Because if it's this constant, like 2 years and gone and all that, it's just I'm so tired of it. I really, really am.
Yeah, Bob Melvin was somebody that was seen as a possibility the last time go around, but he just went off to San Diego. And yeah, I don't know. I was kind of turned off of Melvin after the transition from Oakland to San Diego. It just didn't look like he was able to control like any egos in that clubhouse whatsoever with the Padres. And you really just did not see that much in Oakland. And, if there was like a big stage test for Bob Melvin, I mean, he really just hasn't succeeded in that sort of thing. Not really much of it being his fault in Oakland. At this point, I mean, we just really haven't seen him succeed under that big light or whatever. And even though he's had some fantastic regular seasons, if you're trying to contend for a World Series, we've seen so far that proven Bob Melvin has not been able to win one. So, and he hasn't been able to get a deep playoff run. And I've seen him get outmanaged before. It's not like I've seen him as this perfect manager, but it was an option. But it just doesn't look like the Mets are interested whatsoever. It doesn't seem like he's on whatever radar. I think it's just a name that gets popped up as someone who possibly could be available after the Padres have struggled for so long.
The fact that we said this at the Stearns conference, that he was at the conference himself, said, I'm willing to hire a first-time manager, kind of gave me the inkling. I said it 2 weeks last show or the week before. That the fact that he went out and said it publicly, like not like, oh, he talked to Heyman or he talked to Pat. He said that with a mic in front of a camera for everyone to hear. So that pretty much signaled to me, all right, he's going first time. And if he can get counsel, obviously that was connections with Milwaukee. But when he said that, it's like, okay, for me, it looked, okay, he's going to try to find his version of counsel, find the young guy that he can just connect, be symbiotic, and that be it. The fact that counsel keeps coming up, and that's been ever since he didn't get an extension, that like it's just going to be, okay, let's see how long this goes. And that's his first option. And the second, obviously, to go to the first-time guy is the second option. But the fact that he's more willing, it's not like, oh, it's a backup plan of, well, we're shooting for this, and then there's the first-time manager. It's kind of like, hey, they're looking to see what happens with counsel, but they are kind of focused on getting that first-time guy. And the names that have been out there have been the same kind of guys that we've heard for years. It seems like every time, like Frank said, every time it's a coaching candidacy, the Mets fire a GM or fire a manager, it's always the same few guys' name that consistently get brought up. Thank God Eduardo Perez's name has not been brought up once, because God, no. I do not need to hear that voice anytime, oh, the Mets made a big decision, and I need to hear him talk about, oh, we traded for Juan Soto, oh, we traded for Mike Trout, and he needs to break the game. No. Enough is on ESPN. Leave his ass in the booth. Don't even think about it. We'll see once the official first round of interviews, we'll start getting more. I'm surprised a few names haven't been brought up. Obviously, you saw Heyman wrote that big article in the Post. AJ Hinch was high on that list for some reason, which I don't know if I would go there. but it's better than some. But the fact that it's kind of hopefully going to be, again, like down to Espada and those guys, and then we'll see some other bench coaches that, again, he's going young he's he's one of the youngest president of baseball operation people in baseball. At the time when he was hired in Milwaukee, he was younger than Ryan Braun when he took over. So he knows that he'll have a younger, he's looking for the younger guy as well to build the relationship throughout the team. So again, it's just a wait and see. We'll see officially once that first round goes and see everybody yell about, oh, well, I don't want this guy. I don't want Ron Washington or whatever some names were brought up. We'll get to that point. But again, the fact that they are looking first time is probably the way they're going to go.
The names that you mentioned, if there's a first-time manager, I could see the Mets hiring. The guy that sticks out to me, I think, is Mark DeRosa. I feel like that's a guy that I could see them doing. That's just my prediction. Mark DeRosa, there's a couple of things going for him. Number one, all the different teams that he's played for. I think that's something that is always good to have. You know, the more experience and like experience with different organizations, different styles, I think is good. The fact that he wasn't a star player, he was a utility guy that played all over the field, wasn't great, so he could relate to a lot of players much better than the superstars can. You know, I mean, last time we see a very, very good Hall of Fame player who's a good manager. Doesn't happen, and that's in any sport. And the other thing I think Mark DeRosa has going for him is his MLB Network experience, being on a show every single day. It's important to be able to handle New York media and be able to have those press conferences and not make a fool out of yourself and have the media against you and the fans go against you by saying foolish things and constantly having microphones in your face every single day. I feel like Mark DeRosa would be able to handle that. And I think that's actually an underrated thing about being a New York manager that you always have to take in consideration also when you're doing these interviews. So, and you know, like we said, he coached the USA team. You know what I mean? There's not much managing that goes on there. But just for me as a first-year manager on the outside, I could see someone like him getting a job. I'm not saying that I would do it, but I could see that happen.
That was the name that, again, that has been brought up, and I'm like, don't touch him with a 10-foot stripper pole. Like,
why does it have to be a stripper pole? It can't just be a pole.
That's the saying. It's the saying.
I don't think it is.
It's something that's a type of, I wouldn't say Wilpon lull Mets thing, but like, oh, let's get the TV personality. Oh, he's on MLB Network all the time. Hey, he managed WBC. You couldn't fuck that up with that much talent. Still found a way to do it. But again, that's the name I'm like again, with the GM last year with Eduardo Rodriguez, I was like, don't touch him. I stay away. Give him an interview because, of course, give everybody at least.
So you don't want Jessica Mendoza? Is that what you're saying?
No, that's another thing. But yeah, just stay away from, again, give him an interview unless he's like blows you away, which we'll never know. But that is a guy that I'm like staying away from, because if it goes wrong, there's so many ways for this to be an embarrassment that it's like, it could be good. I wouldn't bank on it, but if it goes wrong, there were so many ways to me just trolled and joked. Keep the baseball people that are in the game now. Would I be mad if he got an interview? No, but I'm not taking his candidacy seriously if it's just me.
When I look at external option and I look at a first-time manager, I look at two different types of first-year manager. I look at first-year manager, and then I look at Mets first-year managers. What do I mean by that? The Mickey Callaway, who was a pitching coach, the Carlos Beltran, who was just a player and has never managed before, the Luis Rojas, who was a quality control coach. Those are the type of first-year managers that I'm not looking to go after. I would like there to be a bench coach. I would like it to be someone who has actually been in the game, never was a manager before, but has been close to that certain position before. Obviously, I talked about Joe Espada. I think that would be a perfect fit. Yeah, Mark DeRosa, there's like it's a boom or bust, I'd say, that if you were to hire someone like him, someone who I think that a lot of players respect a lot throughout the game, I think that it might fit the model a little bit better than you think of, like a manager who's kind of just a yes man to a GM or a yes man to a president of baseball operations. But I don't see any possibility where he's kind of like just on the same page of a guy like Stearns. I think that there's just like a little bit of like repellent there, but it's obviously just been a media mention. I don't want them to hire a rookie manager. I want them to hire a first-time manager, if that makes sense. So rookie manager meaning that they had basically their last job had absolutely nothing to do with this job, but it's like, okay, you can strings attach a few different skills there or whatever. Mickey Callaway, he was a pitching coach, and this team is built around pitching with Jacob deGrom and Zach Wheeler. And no, that's just stupid. Eric Chavez, I already talked about him. I think he's actually eventually going to leave for a managerial job at one point. Obviously, Beltran has been a subject of debate ever since that, he was fired before he got to manage a game. But I think that overall, if the Mets were to hire someone external, they're going to hire a first-time manager. It needs to be an actual first-time manager, someone who has been leading up to that job and not just somebody just to be creative and be different. And like I said, the Mickey Callaway and the Carlos Beltran, the Luis Rojas. I mean, we saw when they hired Terry Collins. I mean, Terry Collins was, I believe, the bench coach for somebody. Yeah, he was with like the Astros and the Angels, like in their coaching staff, stuff like that. And then I'm pretty sure, he actually managed the he managed the team that Yoshi Yamamoto's on right now in Japan. That's cool. It needs to be somebody who's young, who's adaptable, and it's just they have to see eye to eye, obviously, with David Stern. And that's literally just the number one thing. We'll see where they go in this direction, because at one point you feel like they got to get it right somehow. It's time to beat the dead horse yet again. I am asking New York sports media to once not drop a story about this crap, okay? I'm tired of it. We all are. But earlier this week, John Heyman of the New York Post reported that the Mets at the MLB trade deadline tried to move Daniel Vogelbach, but the Mets encountered a lack of interest and they found no takers for the 30-year-old designated hitter. A few weeks ago, we learned before his resignation that ex-Mets general manager Billy Epler pushed back with a lot of resistance to keep Daniel Vogelbach in the lineup after the trade deadline, despite Vogelbach's lack of production, leaving former Mets manager Buck Showalter to start questioning why the struggling bat was still on the roster. Vogelbach is still under Mets team control through 2024, being viewed as the Mets' top candidate to be non-tendered this offseason, projected to make $2.3 million next season in ARB3. Okay, so the Mets apparently wanted to trade Vogelbach. Does this change any view on Epler or anything?
I mean, it doesn't do much. I mean, it's just another example of a player that Epler acquired who didn't get the job done, so he has to get rid of him. I mean, and that was kind of the theme of what this trade deadline was about. The Verlander thing didn't work out. The Scherzer thing didn't work out. Everything he did didn't work out, so he had to get rid of the guys. Vogelbach was another perfect example. And to me, it makes it even more, at least for me, it gives me more reason to non-tender him, because it's like, if no one wants him, why would I want him? I mean, if the other teams think, and again, and we already know the other reason why he shouldn't be on the team. We've said it every single week. I'm not doing it again. But I just think it gives you, like, if no one would want him and he doesn't serve value to other teams at the number he had with the team control and all that, why would you give him a raise? You know what I mean? And it's like we said, if you already have a guy internally in DJ Stewart who could take that job easily and play the field compared to Vogelbach just doing nothing, it's just another example of Epler and the bad decision to get rid of Holderman for this guy, and then he just could never make up for it. I mean, like we say, two wrongs don't make a right. And by the fact that they decided to continue playing him, even though he didn't have that value, it still just makes no sense.
I mean, what competitive team would have wanted him? And at the trade deadline, no bum teams are trying to add a fat guy that does nothing. So, does it make Epler look any better? I guess, because he tried. I try to eat salad doesn't mean I do it. So just because you try didn't mean you actually got it done. And the fact that even after the deadline, he still pushed for him to be in the lineup. I'm just sick and tired. This is the last time I'm talking about this guy. I don't care if it's another topic. I don't care if he gets DFA'd. I'm not talking about this fat Jabba the Hutt again. He was useless. Epler, again, gave up a controllable reliever for him. We all know the story. He gets non-tendered and he goes to the Dodgers and it's 45 homers next year. We're not going to be surprised.
I mean, I kind of would. I mean, 40 is quite a bit. He'd have to swing the bat a lot in order for that to happen.
He comes into spring training just like 50 pounds lighter, extra muscle.
But the thing is, he came in this year lighter and was even worse.
Was he really lighter?
That's what they said. I mean,
supposedly, yeah.
It's hard to tell the difference, but that's what.
Is this like kind of like a certain orange man 6'3", 215. Like, is this? No, I don't know. He probably just gained it all back before the season even started. I think that, like, you look at this and it just makes you question, once again, I'm with Buck here. Why the fuck was he still here? Like, if you were looking to trade him, if nobody wanted him, what the hell was he still doing here? I understand that they gave up on the season and whatever, but you had prospects who needed playing time. It just didn't make sense. Like, why was he still here when you were just trying to trade him? You understood that it was a mistake to trade for him. Obviously, he's going to get non-tendered, and this is going to happen, but I just wanted to point this thing out because I feel like we're continuing to uncover a lot of clues of what happened during this 162 game season. And, you know, we go back from all the way at the beginning of spring training. Let's not forget when, like, Steve Gelbs reported that, like, this clubhouse just felt different compared to this 2022 team that won 101 games. And for some reason, we're just continuing to see stories that just continue to unravel, escalate. Daniel Vogelbach, if he is on the team next year, it will be established that this team is not serious. I will 100% agree that this team is not serious. You can put David Stearns in front of me. You can hire whoever you want. But if you keep Daniel Vogelbach on this roster, who seemed like just a lovelorn of Billy Epler, or of somebody who is just trying to prove himself right, there is absolutely no excuse as to why he should be here next year. And to be honest, I am so surprised that nobody wanted him. Nobody wanted 500-pound whale who does absolutely nothing, can't hit left-handed pitching, can't play a position, can't do anything. Like, nobody wanted that. The Mets are the only team that actually valued that at any one point. This was a guy who was DFA'd twice. He was traded 3 times. He was released 3 times. Wow. He was making $1.5 million. Pennies compared to Steve Cohen's wallet. You could have just cut him. You could have just DFA'd him. I understand the team wasn't competing. I still just did not understand a team that was trying to get younger.
He was taking up time for Mark Vientos. He was taking up time for even Mauricio, since we felt like we didn't have a position for him that was ideal besides shortstop where Lindor was taken up. Like, he still blocked the playing time and development of other young players, which when you're a rebuilding team and you're selling off, that is always supposed to be the top priority. And they were not able to accomplish that by having some of those guys on the bench for him to play.
It seemed like there were so many signs where he was getting the limited playing time. He was only playing at this point. Buck Showalter didn't understand why he was here. You had back and forth debates, and now it said that they were trying to trade him at the trade deadline. So you had all of these stories revolving around this guy not being here, but yet he was still here. It just seemed like, oh, well, having this thing in my house, it's making me sick and it's destroying everything that I own and it's disrupting everyone around me. But you know what? It's mine. So I'm just going to keep it for the last time. And I agree with Andrew. This is the last time we are talking about Daniel Vogelbach. I don't care if he shot someone, he did something illegal. We are not talking about this anymore. So this is also an ongoing story right now that continues to escalate. And this is also a PSA that we are not talking about Daniel Vogelbach anymore. Unless he gets a ridiculous extension for no goddamn reason, we are not talking about Daniel Vogelbach. When he gets DFA'd, when he gets released, we will only be putting it in the rapid fire stories. No one cares about Daniel Vogelbach anymore. So in need of starting pitching, the Mets are expected to be very aggressive on the free agent and trade market this offseason. In regards to all of those options, Connor Rogers at SNY linked the possibility of Chris Sale as a low return option for the Mets rotation. Rogers noted that Boston will be bringing in a new staff with the firing of Chaim Bloom and could be looking to clear some payroll, with the possibilities of this trade including Boston retaining a portion of Sale's salary to get out of it for luxury tax purposes, or the Mets could take on all of Sale's money, but the deal could be sweetened with one of Boston's top prospects. Even though his production has slowed down recently, Sale has still been able to put up competitive numbers when he is on the field. But after undergoing 2 major surgeries since 2019, the lanky southpaw has posted a 3.93 earned run average, a 3.72 fielding independent pitching, striking out 28.8% of batters in just 151 innings pitched in the last 3 seasons. The 34-year-old Sale is owed $27 million for the 2024 season, which also includes a 2025 team option worth over $20 million. Andrew, you're the GM. Would you do something that involved somebody like Chris Sale, or are you just not touching this?
No, thank you. Unless you're giving me Marcelo Meyer with it, no, thank you. We just got rid of one of these guys who are electric when they're on the mound. Problem is they're not on the fucking mound, and the Mets need some more stability in their rotation. And like you said, they have their ace if need be in Senga. You know, I would obviously love them to go out and add more great elite pitching, which Chris Sale is when he's on the mound. But the fact that it's a 1-year guaranteed, pretty much, it's $20 million. If they eat maybe half, you could talk me into it. But again, it's just there's already 3 question marks. 3 in the rotation guaranteed. You bring him in, yes, when he's on the field, he's very productive. He's just never on the field. And again, Chris Sale 5 years ago, hell yeah. If they eat enough money and they give me a sweetener, if he's like my number 4, like if you go out and tell me you're going on the free agent market and you're getting 2 more legit guys who can guarantee at least 150 innings, 160 innings, then I can be okay. We can risk it with Chris Sale because you went out and got some more stability in the rotation. Fine, you can take that risk. But the fact that, okay, this is just Chris Sale as he's my number 2, yeah, I'm not doing that. Unless I'm, again, getting a sweetener and they're eating a ton of money. And yes, the ability of, hey, if he's good, you have the ability to bring him back next year. He's just not been the most dependable arm, and I'm tired of having these, electric, elite, talented arms. They're just going to make you 6 to 12 starts a year, and you're never going to see him. And you got to go again back to David Peterson and Tyler Megill getting consistent anytime because these guys can't stay on the field. So, again, if this is my 3rd pitcher you're bringing in, sure, I'd be fine with it with some more stability in the rotation. If we're expecting Chris Sale, to be Chris Sale, you're just setting yourself up for failure because he's proven it the last 3 years. He's not dependable enough to put him in to that Chris Sale mode. So again, sweetener, a ton of money eaten. You can talk me into it, but it ain't my first choice.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement. There are way too many ifs for this to actually work out totally in the Mets' favor, because you have the biggest if of all is the health. I mean, that's the main thing. We've seen Chris Sale these past few years just dealing with so many different injuries that, he comes back and then he's gone again immediately. And some of it, there's unlucky stuff like, the line drive that came back at him and things like that. But it just seems like for the most part, he hasn't been able to get onto the mound. And like Andrew said, the Mets are not built like a team right now who can take the risk of adding a Chris Sale to the rotation. I mean, we've talked about enough with the lack of depth that they have in the pitching right now. They can't have a guy who's such a injury liability taking up a big portion of that. And for me, if I were to do this Chris Sale thing, it would be much later in the offseason. I want to see what else I could do before it gets to that point. What happens with the Yamamoto sweepstakes? Can I possibly make a trade for a Corbin Burns? Or like even Andrew's talked about plenty of times, one of those pitchers in Seattle. I'd be much more in favor of that because I know that's a young upside piece. I just think with Chris Sale, this is no one of those guys who best years are behind him. When he's on the field, he can do some things for him. But again, that's when. And it's like, are the Red Sox actually going to chip in a lot of the money? Are the Red Sox going to give you a big time piece? I mean, you have so many different things that need to happen in order for this to work that it just doesn't seem like it should be a top priority at all. So for me, if I were to do this, it would be much later on in the offseason when I have a better indication of what my pitching is like. If the Mets do actually add a few quality pitchers, some guys that can stay on the field, and then the Red Sox are just so desperate that they will take on that money, and then maybe I get some kind of young pieces out of it, then sure. But I think that right now, the Mets got to be focused on other things. I mean, they have to prioritize other pieces much higher than Chris Sale right now in order for them to actually have a quality offseason and get back on the right track.
This is actually a little bit more conflicting than you think it is. Obviously, 34 years old, coming off of a lot of injuries. It's Chris Sale who has really just not been on the mound. I mean, 151 innings in the last 3 seasons. I think that if you were looking at this for a back-end piece to your rotation, it would be a very expensive back-end piece to your rotation if you're taking on the rest of that money. I personally would take on all of the Chris Sale money to see if you could get someone from Boston's farm system. But what I would do is it has to come with a pitching prospect. I'm not looking at Mayer. I'm not looking at anybody else. I'm looking at a pitching
And they don't
prospect to
have
come
that.
along with it.
And they don't have that. Unless it's like Brian Bello. Like if it's Brian Bello coming with it,
Yeah, I don't even consider Bello a prospect because he pitched most of the season already.
and Heim was just like the Mets, kind of all of his prospects that he brought in were bats. He really hasn't developed the pitching side when he was there. So it's been all bats, Meyer, York, Jordan, take your pick. It's all bats. There's no, oh, there's a guy definitely I want. It's like same thing with other teams with Pete Alonso. Like the Cubs, ain't nothing fucking want. Same thing. There's just, it's a lot of bats that play the same position. So
I've been looking at their some of them, and they got some live arms there. So I mean, I think that if you can take one of their mid 15 to 30 prospects along with Chris Sale, who we all know at his best when he is healthy can deliver you, a quality outing. Let's not forget how amazing of a postseason pitcher he is. I think that somebody like, Luis Paredes is somebody like that. I'm seeing right here. There's another guy, Angel Bastardo, who I kind of like here. Like, there's a few guys who got some explosive stuff that I would look at in the Red Sox farm system. Just get some kind of extra arm just to make it a little bit younger when you're bringing on an older pitcher. And then you obviously have the team control in 2025. I don't think this is a bad idea, but I don't think it's the number one thing that I would do to try and bolster this rotation. But at his best, we all know how good Chris Sale can be. I'm not saying that this guy has really, really struggled. He's still, overall, his stuff has really has not changed that much. He's got a little bit of a dip in velocity, but that's kind of what the Stearns thing is here for. So if you're trying to get some of these pitchers to come in here, revitalize his career from like the back end of this rotation, I would not be opposed to it. But again, like Andrew said, this can't be your number 2. This can't be your number 3, possibly not even your number 4, because the number 4 and 5, they need to be probably the most healthiest arms out of the entire rotation. And Chris Sale is not going to be one of those. I would obviously definitely consider doing something like this, but it has to have some kind of long-term stability coming back as well if the Mets were to take on this money. Because we all know that with Steve Cohen, the money is just the money. I think that Chris Sale still has a lot of value on the mound when he's out there, but it's definitely not the number one guy that I'm taking out there. Obviously, his Boston teammate, again, I've already talked about that. If you're speaking a one-year deal that will probably be a little bit more cheaper, more than a $27 million that you possibly owe to him, James Paxton's another option. I think that would be a good back-end starter. But again, just like Chris Sale, who's been injured as much, just like James Paxton, who's been injured as much as they have been, it can't be the number one guy to put behind Senga in the rotation. Chris Sale, yeah, we're trying to get away from those old guys, but it's all really just comes down to what the risk is, but it all just depends on what they're going to be relying him to do. And that's pretty much it. It's not like Max Scherzer or Justin Verlander, who they were relying to be their top 2 and lead them into the playoffs and be the aces that they have been throughout their entire career. It all just depends on what the Mets are looking to get out of Chris Sale. If they're looking to get 150 innings out of him, that's a no.
Yeah, because I think definitely the trade market is going to have to be a major thing. The Mets need to go out and sign at least 1 or 2. But again, you have a kind of a surplus now of that you can go out and get guys. And it doesn't matter if they're going to go straight, let's look for number 2s or look for 3s and 4s. Because there's a couple of guys you can get on crappy teams who still are young enough, team control enough, and have higher upside than going out and get a Chris Sale. Again, a guy coming off a bad year who still has a crazy upside, if not maybe being a legit ace, but a number 2, number 3, I'm calling Kansas City and see if I can get off Brady Singer. I'm calling Pittsburgh for Mitch Keller. There are plenty of guys on the trade market that I would rather have who are a little more dependable than Chris Sale. Again, not going to be the top game one, but you kind of already have that. And let's say you go get Yamamoto as your 3rd starter, maybe even 4th starter, depending how aggressive these guys, depending, are going to be on the free agent market. Let's say you signed, hypothetically, Yamamoto and I'm saying Jordan Montgomery. I said Jordan Montgomery before the postseason, but let's just say that. Then Singer's coming in at your 4, or Keller, whoever is your 4 with Quintana as your 5. You've got depth throughout that rotation. Again, we'll see what prospect. And with the Royals especially, they're a horrible baseball team with one of the worst farm systems in baseball. So, and they have Bob Witt. They're not years from being a competitive, even though in the crappy AL Central, they might look to move Singer with 2 years of team control to try to get something in that godforsaken farm system who can not speed up their rebuild, but can give them some pieces where Singer is not going to be on their timeline. By the time they're maybe even competitive in the AL Central, he's probably going to be a free agent. And Mitch Keller, who I'm not the hugest on Mitch Keller, but is my number 3 or number 4 for, not a horrific, kind of the Bassett type package we gave up. That's the kind of guy I could fit with 2 years of team control that would fit that mid rotation if you're going out and getting, hypothetically Yamamoto, or let's say for some reason they go after Snell, get a top guy to go in that 3 or 4 spot. The trade market should be that to save one, use some of that extra excess fat capital you have, and then use some other money to go in to fill other holes.
I would say that Mitch Keller would be a good pickup. I mean, Frank, anybody else that you would?
No, I do like the idea of pursuing the young guys, particularly like answer for the contract, especially as you're going. Like we talked about so many times, like the untapped potential of maybe Mitch Keller because he is younger compared to if you pick up one of these veterans. Again, you've seen the best of them. If anything, it can only get worse for them. Whereas with the young guys, they can only get better. And if you get them at those, good deals and with the top heavy roster that you have, it gives you that more money for the Pete Alonso extension, or if you did want to add on to one of those corner outfielders, like we talked about a bunch of times, whether that's, Jock, or if, Soler opts out, or all these different, power bats are going to be available. Oscar, like because we know the Mets need pitchers as well. So if they could save money somewhere, that this way they could kind of focus on that other area and still stay young, I think that'd be the perfect thing because, like we said, they need to get younger. I mean, that has got to be a big priority for this team because they were just too old last year. So I think that pursuing the trade market would be the way to go because you're not going to find young starting pitching in free agency with the way contracts are. I mean, by the time those guys are free agents, they're not going to be the same age as if you make these trades for them. So, I mean, that's something that I'd really be looking at too.
That's the main reason of just age, just in general, I think is the reason why Yamamoto should just be so high on the list for the Mets. If they were to go out and like try and trade for somebody a lot younger, like the thing is that we haven't seen them really trade for somebody with actual like years of control to address that rotation. I mean, Chris Bassett was a pending free agent. If they had some multiple years of control, has a lot of upside. And somebody like Mitch Keller, if you're talking about Brady Singer, if you're talking about, a few of these guys who you could get like some years of control of, like, compared to kind of what the Yankees did with Jamison Tyone, or, some things where guys are here for multiple years and, you can see if you can get any stability with them in the middle of the rotation. I think that's something that you can do, but Chris Sale is an option, and I don't think it's as bad of an option as people think it is. Is it the 100% right thing to do? No. Is it the 100% thing that I would do at the top of my list to address the pitching rotation? Absolutely not. Was this a 100% amazing move to make 5 years ago? Absolutely.
I guess we got to finish this up because we were talking about taking on money as for like passive greatness. Obviously, everyone's saying Soto in the Padres fire sale. Would you take Musgrove? Because think about it. Everyone's saying, they're going to move Soto to move money. What if they're looking long-term money, not just short-term money? I'm not touching Darvish. But again, if Musgrove's your 3, again, not my number 2. Again, keep this all into consideration. You're going out, at least get one of Yamamoto or a top flight guy. And Musgrove is your 3, and they eat some of the money. Again, just ideas being thrown on top of my head because I could see stuff. Everyone thinks, Soto's the guy in San Diego they move. What if they're looking long-term books? Because they're not going to move Bogarts. Not going to move Tatis. So you look Darvish.
Machado.
They're probably not moving Machado. So you're looking at they have 4 guys in that rotation making a shit ton of money.
He's better than a lot of the other options on the free agent market. I mean, I will give it that. And then if you could get the shiny ear playoff one, I mean, then you got, the best pitcher in the league. So at least you have that going for you. You don't have to face him anymore. He seems to do so well in Citi Field. So
all right, let's play this game. Yeah, let's play that game. Would you rather want, I think that was 4 years or like less than $100 million for Musgrove? Look what Talon Walker just got. Look at all. This is what the price of pitching. Who would you rather have at that price? Again, especially now the price of pitching. If again, that's the type of guy just put a pin in it. I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but everyone just keep a pin in San Diego because I think that's a bomb just waiting to blow off.
What's the AAV in Musgrove?
I think he's got 120 million a year, so 20 something million a year. You can check it on Spot. I don't have a computer.
If it's 17, like that's in the same range of like what Carlos Carrasco is getting.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, would you much rather have?
The only problem is term. The problem is it's 4 years of term.
They're gonna have to go external just to build like the rest of this rotation, no matter what. If it is somebody they signed in free agency, they have to make a trade. I think that overall, the best case scenario is where they sign 2 starting pitchers and they trade for 1. Like that's what I think that is like the ideal piece of it. And then you kind of just sort out the rest of the rotation as to what you have internally.
We're not leaving optionable starter. We're not making that a thing. Get 5 fucking starters.
No, I'm not talking. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about multiple 5-starter options.
I get what you. Yeah, but no.
We've seen do stuff before.
Get 4 starters and have Quintana be the 5, and then let those guys rot away in Syracuse if need.
So one of the biggest question marks in the Mets lineup going into 2024 is going to be, and it will continue to be, third base, with loads of internal and external options to address the position. As for those internal options, the Mets have been very cautious with the development of Brett Baty, Ronnie Mauricio, and Mark Vientos, seeing shades of promise throughout last season. Brett Baty was the Mets' first-round pick in 2019 and has struggled so far in his major league career offensively and defensively. Ronnie Mauricio was called up this year in September, played a bit of second base and third base in the majors. Mark Vientos played a combination of first base, third base, and designated hitter throughout the year, displaying a good amount of his raw power at the plate. Now, among these 3 young players, the Mets also have some external options in free agency, headlined by Blue Jays third baseman Matt Chapman, along with Jeimer Candelario, Gio Urshela, and also of veterans like Evan Longoria. Since the captain David Wright retired at the end of 2018, the Mets have had 17 players make a start at third base, where Mets third basemen are 25th in Fangraphs wins above replacement per the position.
I'm gonna quote something Frank said earlier in the pod. There are so many other holes to fill in this team. Stay internally. And obviously, would Matt Chapman be nice? Yeah, but what Matt Chapman we getting? We getting the one in April or the one the other 7 months of the year that he didn't do dick? So, and this is the problem with Matt Chapman. And that's no fault of his own. It's not his fault. In the free agent class, it is Shohei Ohtani, a huge gap, and then Matt Chapman is the best offensive target left. Meaning, he's going to be overpaid. And how do you get in trouble? Overpaying mediocre to above average players superstar money. He's going to get 6, 7, 8 years of probably anywhere from 17 to 24 million per season. Would I be mad if Matt Chapman's playing third base for the Mets on opening day? No. Would I love it? Yeah. He's hitting the market kind of at the perfect opportunity, not on the best season, because if again the season was just April, he'd be getting like $50 million a year. He's still one, if not the best, a top 3 best defensive player in baseball, especially at his position. The other options, Jeimer Candelario, a guy who had a very good season, don't get me wrong. Some flukiness to it. You know, he obviously had a great opportunity with the Nationals at the beginning of the year, had played every single day, gets traded to the Cubs. And then kind of what I think, again, I think the kids need to be Ronnie, Brett, just battle out because there's so many other holes in this roster that you need to spend money on. Deep pitching, starting, rotation, DH, corner outfielders. Then there's third base. You've got enough guys from the guys who've seen the big leagues. You've got McNeil, you've got Brett, you've got Ventos, you've got Ronnie. Hell, even Jet could be in that conversation at some point this year. You've got plenty of guys internally. One of them's got to grab the job by the balls. Guys for one spot. Somebody has to grab that job by the balls so you can take the other assets, the value, the money you have, which again, we have more money than Jesus, but that doesn't mean every single position has to have a top 10 highest paid guy in the sport. If you look at next year's trade candidacy, we thought third base is one of the most loaded positions in baseball. That's kind of fallen off because look at this year's class. Obviously Chapman and Jeimer, and then you can go with your vets, Longo, Turner, whatever. Bregman's next year. I don't see Bregman leaving. Then the next guy would be Eugenio Suarez. Best free agents in the next 4 years. So there's no guys going to be on the market. So if maybe Seattle, which again I've said it's my second favorite team, and I kind of have a feel for what DePoto does, I wouldn't be surprised if he moved money for Suarez to go out and address other needs. So could that be a fit? I yelled for it 2 years ago, and everyone called me a nut job, and look what happened. So maybe you call Jerry and try to persuade something there, but it kind of has to stay internally, because either you're going to overpay by an ungodly amount, or you're going to, again, go use assets that you could be using for pitching. So it just makes sense. You've got too many guys internally. Someone has to take the job and run with it.
I'm in agreement in the sake of you have a much better chance of Ronnie Mauricio being your third baseman and being a productive, effective player for you, a positive player on the field, compared to if you went in-house for starting pitcher. If you try to use some of your guys from inside to be one of your starters, not going to get it done. And the same goes for the outfield. I feel like that is, of all the holes that the Mets have, the one that's easiest for them to solve, like you said, is third base. So again, I just think that if third base was the only position left, then maybe you could take a chance on Chapman. But with all the other things that still need to be done, I feel like I still want to see Ron Mauricio get a fair chance, just in general. I mean, whether it's third base, whether it, like we said, it's DH, are you going to trade him? I mean, they still have got to decide what they're going to do with this guy, because again, he's not going to play shortstop. I mean, it's something that, in the minor leagues, they tried all these different positions with him. I think he profiles more as a third baseman than he does a second baseman, that kind of frame. So I'd be much more willing to try him out there and see what happens. I think that, again, offensively at their best, Ronnie Mauricio fits his lineup more than Brett Beatty does as far as their strengths and weaknesses. So to me, I just think there's more value in Mauricio. And he's a guy I really want to see what he can do, and I want him to play.
You have three general options of guys we've seen play third base before who are young, they're controllable, in Beatty, Mauricio, and Vientos. I need the Mets to do something at this third base position that doesn't involve them just pushing Luis Guillorme in spring training and being a possible competing for, Luis Guillorme is going to take your job if you don't step this up. Because if the Mets had a bunch of third base options, and obviously all three of these guys are not going to be in the lineup at third base. You can't have three third basemen in one lineup. I think that they need to add somebody this offseason who, at their best, would start for you. And they could also come off the bench. And that could be somebody that you bring in on a 1-year deal that could possibly, I know you just said Evan Longoria, but I think Gio Urshela is a better possibility.
He's tried. Again, another one of these fluke guys. Went to the Yankees, had one good fluke year in Baby Park. Would I hate it? No, but
again, he pushes a guy like Brett Beatty.
That is
true. He
true.
pushes a guy like Ronnie Mauricio. Like, that's the thing. They need to bring in somebody, but it also can't be someone who, at their worst, who's Evan Longoria, who's 39 years old or 38 years old. He ain't going to do anything. It needs to be somebody with actual upside. Gio Urshela, what is it, 32? Like, at your best, like, you could get 15 20 home runs from him as a third baseman at his best. But what I'm saying is that you need somebody in there to push one of these young guys, because Luis Guillorme ain't going to do that. Like, Luis Guillorme, if they keep him next year, like, if he comes back, which I hope not, he's not going to be the one, I'm catching bats in spring training, I'm coming for your job, right? It's not going to be like that. They need a veteran there, right, who is better than Eduardo Escobar to push somebody, right? And I think that Gio Urshela would be a good piece to that. Obviously, I would not go after Matt Chapman at this point, to be honest. With all the uncertainty we have in the outfield right now, like, I think that that's what you have to address in free agency the best. But they do need to bring in somebody in that infield who is, whether it's a veteran or has somewhat of upside, could bring in a 1-year prove-it deal, could decide the future, one of the prospects that we have here. Now, I don't think Mark Vientos is in the running for third base. I don't want to see him at third base, but I really want to see somehow them try to establish something at third base of whether someone's going to take the job or run with it, or we're going to have to bring in a veteran to take that and be a possible, part-time player behind them. Because, Ronnie Mauricio, we still haven't seen much from him, and that's not really much to his fault. But Brett Beatty, I know sure as hell he ain't my third baseman on opening day. I know sure as hell I would not be comfortable with that because he was god awful. So they need somebody there who still has a lot left in the tank. I understand that Gio Urshela is coming off of some injuries, coming off of this or that, but if there is somebody that can come in there who also wants a starting job as well that they could sign on a 1-year prove-it deal, Gio Urshela could be one of those guys you could bring in. Yammer Candelario, I think that he wants a guaranteed starting job. Personally, I would not go that direction, but I would go internally for third base because, again, I can't deal with the plugging in of prospects when they haven't proven anything at the major league level when you're trying to be a competitive team. It just cannot happen. I understand you have the upside of all of these guys, but none of them have taken the job and run with it. The only prospect that has taken the job and run with it is Francisco Alvarez. That is your catcher on opening day. As for Beatty, Mauricio, and Vientos, they still have yet to prove anything. Even though I like one of them more than the other, they still need to bring in somebody who could be a starting caliber player to possibly push them out and push them to that next limit because they need something at that third base position in order to try and bring out the best in some of these young players. And it's a 1-year deal. I would not be opposed to that. At one point, you need to get somebody who does have something left in the tank, who has something to prove. And I think that Gio Urshela is one of those types of players. Matt Chapman would be somebody that if you have an actual hole, you don't have any internal you don't have anything. Like you have currently, if your starting third baseman on the depth chart was Luis Guillorme right now, that's when you go after Matt Chapman. But they have 3 prospects who could possibly play third base. And, but I would love to still bring in somebody who, like Gio Urshela, who could come off the bench, who also could start batting 8th, batting 9th in this lineup at his best, right? So I don't know. I think that this is a position that is going to be a very pivotal point. It's been for a while, but obviously with the younger guys coming to the major league level, it's going to be a little bit more of a deciding factor of who's got it and who is going to be a future piece of this team. I mean, we talked about Ronnie Mauricio for a long time, and we've talked about Brett Beatty for a long time. He's been hyped up so unnecessarily. I don't want to see them rely on the prospects to get the job done. I want to see them see something from the external market in case you don't see these young players take the next step in their career. Let's get into the viewer questions. For those of you who are watching and listening, if you guys want to send us a question, make sure to click the link in the description, fill out our form with your name, your Mets-related question, and it could be featured on the next episode of the Mets Weekly Podcast. This one is from Butch Husky, who I believe was a legendary player for the Mets during the dark periods of their franchise. Best and worst move by Billy Epler. Okay, this one might take a little bit longer than... Okay.
Senga, yeah. I mean, try to be different.
Tommy Pham was okay, I think.
The Rayleigh trade, because Keyshawn hasn't burned you yet.
I mean, I would throw, after what happened this past week, the Scherzer trade into there. I mean, after he's just not the guy anymore. I mean, he gets paid so much money, and when you put him in the big moment, he can't come through anymore. And again, I'm not the highest on Luis Angel Acuna. I mean, there were some other Rangers prospects I would have rather taken a chance on. But if he pans out to anything close to what he's projected, I mean, that's a massive steal right there because Scherzer's giving them nothing.
It's kind of depressing that Billy Epler just turned out to be a better seller than he was a buyer.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're a better seller than buyer on a big market like New York, that's that's one of your deal breakers. Well, bad moves, I mean, there's just way too many of them. The fat guy that will be left unnamed, we're not mentioning him ever again. The Darren Ruff trade, obviously, I think that's one of the worst trades in Mets history, in my opinion. And there's been that's saying a lot in terms of value.
I mean, you'll never get me to defend Delmore Narvaez signing still. I mean, I still just felt like that money could have been used elsewhere. I just don't understand it. I mean, what are they going to do with him this year? Yeah, I mean, the fact that it's a 2-year deal,
just a backup catcher. I mean, that's what he is. Just a backup catcher.
Not that great. Yeah. Like all the pitching they need, the outfielders they need, like $10 million for a backup catcher. That's crazy. The Darren Ruff was hard because what bothers me is they purposely went to him mostly for the fact that it was multiple years. But when the guy is 38 years old, that's not a good thing. Like they got so like, oh, we can't be a rental, can't be a rental, that they got rough. It's like, but he's 38, so having multiple years is not a good thing. It was just
I
crazy.
thought you said Narvaez was 38. I was like, holy shit.
No.
Really
for
do
Ruff.
that? Oh my God.
No, for Ruff. I mean, that one is tough, especially the fact that you lost some pitching pieces that you had so little to begin with. The fact you got rid of some of them. And then, of course, J.D. Davis turns out to, get it going again. I mean, it was just bad for so many different reasons.
Re-signing Adam Ottavino is something I would definitely put in there. I didn't like that.
This second year,
we
I'm
were
very
skeptical from the
looking
beginning with
forward
that
to it.
and kind of ran with it. I'd say the Quintana signing was really good. If you're talking about good, I think that for value, backing up the rest of the rotation, especially with how dreadful the rotation was before he came back. And I'd say that long term, the Marte signing is obviously just going to continue to be an issue because we don't know what we're going to get from him, and that's just after year 2. But yeah, there's tons of options you can put in there. But like I would say the very best and the very worst, I would go with Senga as the best one, and the very worst would be the Darren Ruff trade, I think, overall.
Yeah, I think so too.
So we are going to play a game called Guess That Met. So I have 10 questions or clues regarding to a certain Met. We have Andrew versus Frank. They will write down their guesses in silence, and then we will tally them all once we're done. Who gets to win? The winner gets nothing. Here we go. So number 1, this Mets outfielder went on to win the NL MVP award 3 years after the Mets traded him to the Padres. Some of these are difficult. Some of them are obvious. I would say there's a decent mix.
Some old motherfucker. Who the fuck won MVP with the Padres? I'm trying to play that game.
This is probably one of the hard ones because there is kind of a sense of misdirection in this one.
I'm trying. Who the fuck won MVP with the Padres? I thought I was trying to play this game. Who the fuck won? The Padres don't have a lot of awards winners because they sucked for so long.
Number 2, the Mets signed this Venezuelan WBC star reliever from 2006 to a 3-year deal in 2008 in free agency worth over $35 million. From Venezuela, pitched in the WBC, gave him a lot of money.
That money thing's throwing me off. I thought I had a guy. Then he said he got paid a shit ton. I'm like, motherfucker.
3 years, $37 million.
In 07.
In 08, right?
In 08. They paid him in 08.
All
He was a
right.
star in 06. The WBC team of Venezuela. Number 3, this Mets reliever played a 21-year career, signed with the Mets as a free agent at age 40, and pitched a career high of innings in relief for the Mets in 2013.
Oh, fucking Christ.
Oh,
He was an old fuck. We love our old fucks. That narrows it down, doesn't it?
That narrows it down to absolutely fucking.
What do you
there's
want
actually
in
a
your
lot
career?
of people.
I
The
had a-
longevity.
Can I ask for another hint? 'Cause I think if it,
Was
was he drafted by the Mets?
he was not drafted by the
Okay,
Mets.
so it's not who I thought it was. Okay, wrong old fuck. What a fucking 2013 Dark Ages.
I feel like there's so many options there.
And he pitched a shit ton.
A lot. I'm pretty sure it was like 75 innings out of the bullpen
Who the
at 40 years old. Number 4, in 2016, the Mets traded highly regarded prospect Dilson Herrera to Cincinnati for this all-star lefty power anchor.
Okay, thanks for everyone. At least each of us going to get 1 point. God.
Yeah, that's locked in next.
See, I told you, some of these are easy, some of them are hard.
Somebody's like, let's just go to Baseball Reference. Who played a third of an inning with the Mets? That's who we
Yeah.
Number 5, this Mets pitcher made his MLB debut for the Mets at age 19 after being drafted 5th overall by the Mets 2 years prior.
Mets don't rush prospects. The
Age
fuck?
19, youngster.
Unless you got some motherfucker just curveball coming. I think I got it.
I can't say, I don't think I can really say anything like as a
Yeah.
joke because it would just give it right away.
Right away.
Number 6, this Mets starting pitcher was originally signed as a first-round pick by the Braves before the contract was voided due to collegiate ineligibility, as his signing rights were won by the Mets in a lottery drawing. He was originally supposed to be a Brave. He was originally
A Brave. The only time the Mets beat the Braves.
the one time the Mets had the upper hand on the Braves. All right, number 7, this Mets infielder won 3 consecutive Gold Gloves in his first 4 seasons as a big leaguer.
Defense. Who the fuck plays defense with this team?
3 consecutive Gold Gloves. An infielder. Some say he was the greatest to do it at that position. Most of them are wrong.
I can't believe we got Wilfredo Tovar in this game. That's great.
Imagine.
He was a second baseman. He didn't have the range for that.
Well, he played short in the dark ages. Talking about he played short in like 2014, 2013. He played that shit. And then 2022.
Number 8. This switch-hitting outfielder was drafted by the Mets 14th overall in 1973 before being traded to the Rangers for Ron Darling. This guy also came back to win an 86 Mets title, re-signed with them.
And he's on the 86 team. All right, where's the poster at? Traded for Darling.
I didn't realize this would be so challenging. I'm sorry. I apologize. Number 9. This pitcher was traded to the Mets as a rookie from Kansas City and went on to take part in the Yankees' three-peat of World Series titles in 1998, 1999, and 2000. All right, final one. Number 10. This former Mets reliever was credited with the blown save in the infamous Game 6 of the 1986 World Series. The ball went under Billy Buckner's legs, but it wasn't his fault. Someone screwed up. Who was it?
Wait, so it was a Red Sox pitcher or the Mets pitcher?
It was a Red Sox pitcher, but he was a Met. So let's review these answers. Let's see how many you guys got. This Mets outfielder went on to win the NL MVP award 3 years after the Mets traded him to the Padres. Andrew, what'd you put?
But Kevin Mitchell.
Okay. Frank?
George Foster won an MVP.
MVP with the
He was
Reds,
the
yeah.
Met- he was
that's
MVP
the
and then a
answer.
Met.
No, that is the
So-
answer, yeah. Because you threw me off when you said win it with the Padres, yeah.
The correct answer is Kevin Mitchell.
Damn, wow.
That was right. All right.
That's crazy.
All right. Yeah, he won it with the Giants. He was
'cause
traded to
he
the
tied
Padres.
with, he tied with somebody. Yeah,
Yeah.
him and Darryl.
Number 2, the Mets signed this Venezuelan WBC star reliever from 2006 to a 3-year deal in 2008 in free agency worth over $35 million.
I'm going to go with a guy that's very familiar, a big Anaheim Angel and K-Rod.
That was my answer too, because I think that was the year the Mets spent all that money, and he was Venezuelan, so I also had Francisco Rodriguez.
And he was Venezuelan. That is correct. Francisco Rodriguez.
I don't know why I felt like the contract was bigger than that.
It also, is it bad? The first thought I said was Duaner Sanchez, but then I'm like, then you said a lot of money.
No, he was
I'm
already
like-
on the Mets.
You said a lot of money. I'm like, oh, yeah.
He wasn't there when they needed him, though.
No, I know. We know.
Number 3, this Mets reliever played a 21-year career, signed as a free agent at age 40, and pitched a career high of innings in relief for the Mets in 2013. Dark Ages Mets. Andrew, what do you got?
Fucking clue. I thought originally it was going to be Isringhausen, but it's not. I'm just going to say, because he looked 40 years old, I'm going to go Manny Acosta.
Manny Acosta. Okay.
Yeah, there were so many old Mets to pick from. I just took Kyle Farnsworth. I was like, this man.
God,
he was way
that
too old to Met
motherfucker,
that,
yeah.
Both of those are really good guesses.
man.
The correct answer is LaTroy Hawkins.
Oh my
Yeah,
god!
oh
yes,
God,
there were so many old Mets at that time period. Pitching was insane. There were so many choices.
2013 is a year to forget for the New York Mets. Let's just say that. Number 4, in 2016, the Mets traded highly regarded prospect Dilson Herrera to Cincinnati for this all-star lefty power anchor. Frank,
Jay Bruce.
you got Jay Bruce?
No, I got, what's it called? I got Yoenis Cespedes. I'm kidding. Jay Bruce.
Yeah.
Jay Bruce. That is the correct answer.
Can you think about it? It was almost Brandon Nimmo. Like, just think about
Yeah.
that. They almost traded Brandon Nimmo for Jay Bruce.
Oh,
Well, the thing is that Bruce didn't play so far back in the outfield. So,
Yeah.
like, when you think about it,
All those dunks in front
you know,
of
it
him.
may have been the better decision. Number 5, this Mets pitcher made his major league debut at age 19 after being drafted 5th overall by the Mets 2 years prior. Andrew?
Is that the Choo Choo Nolan Express or Nolan Ryan?
Okay.
I had Doc because I knew he pitched young, but I wasn't sure exactly how young, so I went with Doc.
All right. Doc Gooden is the correct
Oh,
answer.
okay.
19 years old. and then it all went to shit.
All the cocaine.
See, I was going to make some drug references. I was going to do some
that'd give it
stupid shit, but
away.
it was just going to give it away. So I remained quiet. Number 6, this Mets starting pitcher was originally signed as a first-round pick by the Braves before the contract was voided due to collegiate ineligibility, as his signing rights were won by the Mets in a lottery drawing.
Yeah, I totally blanked on this one. I had nobody. I couldn't think of anyone who's supposed to be a Brave that ended up being a Met from draft.
Can I say the greatest pitcher in Mets history? Is that the answer, Mr. Tom Turif?
Tom Seaver is the correct answer. Yes.
Yay,
Tom Seaver.
wow.
He was originally supposed to be a Brave. Isn't that that's weird, isn't it? It's weird to think about. But the Braves, they always have bad luck, right?
Bad luck, merchants.
It screwed him over. Okay. Number 7, this Mets infielder won 3 consecutive Gold Gloves in his first 4 seasons as a big leaguer. Andrew.
Oh, Ray Ordonez.
Frank?
I went Robin Ventura. He's got a lot of gold on that resume.
Ray Ordonez is the correct answer. As a Met, 3 consecutive Gold Gloves.
I think Ventura he almost had 3 consecutive with the Mets, but it wasn't the beginning of his career, though.
Yeah, he was in the Rookie of the Year race. And then I don't think he was he didn't play enough. He didn't have enough innings or something. But then he did win 3 consecutive in his 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year. Number 8, this switch-hitting outfielder was drafted by the Mets 14th overall in 1973 before being traded to the Rangers for Ron Darling. Andrew?
Do a guess out, and I'm going to say we drafted his kid, and he's currently a Long Island Ducks legend. I'll go Lee Mazzilli.
Frank?
Yeah, I had no one on this.
Lee Mazzilli is the correct answer. You are on quite a streak. I didn't. You seemed like you were very confused. And then number 9, this pitcher was traded to the Mets as a rookie from Kansas City and went on to take part in the Yankees' three-peat of the World Series titles, 1998, 1999, and 2000. Frank?
David Cone was my guess.
Andrew?
Yeah, Mr. David Ice Cream Cone.
David Cone is correct. And as we all know, he also has a perfect game, but not in a Mets uniform.
Did you know he's an ESPN announcer?
I did know that. That's crazy, isn't it? That's like Tom's River, New Jersey, Todd Frazier level of information. Final one, number 10. This former Mets reliever was credited with the blown save in the infamous Game 6 of the 1986 World Series. Andrew.
I'm going to go Mr. Bob Stanley.
Bob Stanley. Okay. Frank?
Yeah, I just remember Buckner. I couldn't tell you.
We won. That's all that matters. I don't give a fuck about the other
Yeah. I just remember the hitter, the base runners, and the first baseman. Couldn't tell you who the pitcher was. Irrelevant.
Okay. Well, he was not on the mound when they lost, and his name is Calvin Schiraldi. Who was traded to the Red Sox for, I believe, Bobby Ojeda before that season began. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to try and tally this. Hold on. 1, 2, 3,
Andrew had it.
4. Okay, so Frank, you have 4. Andrew has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7-4. Andrew, it's your victory. So say what you can for 10 seconds. Who would you like to thank?
I'd like to thank my Rhino. I'd like to thank Mountain Dew, Chick-fil-A, Will Ospreay, and about it.
Okay. Rapid fire stories. The Mets have placed 6 players on outright waivers. Anthony Kay, Vinny Natali, Michael Perez, Rafael Ortega, Jonathan Arauz, and Danny Mendick will all become free agents if they clear waivers to create 40-man roster space going into the offseason. The Mets have fired 3 veteran scouts, Joseph Cowell, Pat Jones, and Eddie Bain. Bain worked in amateur scouting, while Cowell and Jones worked in pro scouting. A 4th scout, Chad McDonald, also stepped aside for personal reasons. Mets shortstop Francisco Lindor has been nominated for the NL Gold Glove at his respective position alongside other nominees, Dansby Swanson and Ezekiel Tovar. Lindor has won the award twice in his career, and this is the 5th time he has been nominated. Former Mets manager Davey Johnson is among 8 nominees by the Complimentary Baseball Era Committee for Managers, Executives, and Umpires for the 2024 Hall of Fame class. Johnson was the manager of the infamous 1986 Mets team that won the 2nd and latest World Series title in franchise history. Former Mets pitcher Luis Avilan has retired from baseball. Avilan spent 1 year in 2019 with the Mets and played for 6 other teams across a 10-year career. Speaking of another retirement, former Mets pitcher Trevor May has retired from baseball this week, capping off a 9-year career. The 34-year-old May spent 2 years with the Mets from 2021 to 2022 before pitching 1 more season with Oakland this year. Parting words for episode number 30. You can now watch an episode of this podcast for every day of a month. That's crazy. Whatever. Michael Conforto obviously comes to mind. Joely Rodriguez, we can talk about him. Rafael Ortega recently. Who else can we put there?
I had one before the show. Fuck. Who the hell was it? Dark Ages. Shit. David Robertson wore 30, right? Robert.
Yes, that's right.
David Robertson did wear 30. Jeez, all of these awful players stealing Michael Conforto's number.
Parting words is let's go Diamondbacks, because we do not want to see yet another NL East team in that World Series that is not the Mets. Let's go Arizona. Figure it out. Make that comeback. You got it even. Now you're down. Just got to go do it again.
Just go out again. Snake Gang, see what you got. You know, you're going in the hell that is Citizens Bank Park. It's going to be loud. Just wear earplugs. It's pretty good. Just do that. You know, you can't hear them. And then you hit Fat Nukes and you can flip them off. It's great. So get it back. You know, you're not going back to the good thing. The Phillies will not be celebrating in the pool. They already had that planned after 0-2. They thought, oh, we're going to celebrate in the pool. You're not celebrating in the pool, fat ass. No pool parties for you.
What fat ass are you referring to?
Taiwan Walker.
Again, we're just waiting now to see what the next move is, pretty much, for the Mets and the future of this franchise that hangs in the balance of the hands of David Stearns, who has been talked about for the last 3 years as a possible executive. And now he is finally here. But in terms of the postseason, Kyle Schwarber's a freaking beast. Why didn't we sign him? What was against that? Anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in, listening. For those of you on Premiere, for those of you on Playback, we'll see you guys for episode 31, which will be the infamous Mike Piazza episode. We will not have anything special for it, but I'm just going to mention Mike Piazza because that was his number 31 in case you're new here. Let's go Mets. We'll see you guys next time.